Yeah, and let's just talk about it. So, all the other stuff I mentioned, and it's been a couple of weeks. I'm recording this after the eclipse, and, you know, I'm just scrolling Instagram for a second, which I'm not on because I need to update my bio. And so I got in the scroll thing. And in a couple of minutes, I see the following pieces of information. I'm made aware of the following pieces of information. And everything I'm going to say here is like allegedly, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I see a video of Kash Patel looking like he's throwing signs at the camera, like, save me, or if I get killed, I'm signaling to you. Coming out that Charlie Kirk's wife won a pageant in Arizona at 17, she was working for Donald Trump after that. And then she founded some Romanian orphanage, Christian orphanage. And after a while, there were children going missing. So she was actually kicked out of Romania. And then I saw another reel where someone stitched together the security detail for the shot on the president. Oh, the shot on the soon to be president in 2024. And that of what happened with Charlie Kirk. And it's the same dude. I learned this in 3 minutes on the internet. Now, you could say some of this is fake. I don't actually think what I said is fake. I don't think actually what I said is sensationalistic. I think it's actually true. And then I literally was on YouTube for a minute earlier, and there was Tim Dillon, who's a right-leaning comedian. I actually really like him. And then I stopped liking him because he came out on this big thing about when the shooting happened. He made a big thing about it that I wasn't into. So I stopped really listening to him, but he's basically like, big shit's happening. I'm more paranoid now than during the pandemic. He's like, something big is coming. We all know there's a mic drop. We just don't know what's happening. Everyone's on the edge of their seats. There's something new every day. And I'm like, I don't understand these people. Like, people like me have been saying this for like 3 years and we're crazy. But when are you going to start listening to some of these people saying this? Because literally, and on my other podcast, I mentioned the Leo King. He had talked about the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction that happened in January of 2020. And he called it the Great Reckoning. And we know what happened like 2 months later. Like, the shit is real. Like, I don't know how it's real. It's above my pay grade, but it's real. Some other things that happened to me today, I'll just share. I probably already shared about the tax thing, where I couldn't get my money unless I basically did a dance and allowed them to see every angle of my face and my voice and anything they could do to build an AI bot of me if they wanted to, so I could get my tax return. I had to download this app to do that. That happened. What happened today? This literally happened today. I get in these creative manic downloads. Take that back. They're not manic, but I got into a creative flow. And a lot of people are like that. And that's why I'm not doing caffeine anymore. If you've heard some of my other podcasts, I can't do caffeine clearly because then I sound, but what you should know about me is that I'm from New England and I talk extremely fast. So when I talk to myself, I'm like a mile a minute. Like, you can't keep up with me. And Claude AI wouldn't respond to me because it's like, I'm sensing a rapid pace in this communication. It's sounding a little bit, are you sleeping? Why don't you talk to someone? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, you're AI. You're not my therapist. I was like, I'm writing out all of this creative download so that you itemize it so I can put it in a folder and then I don't have to think about it again. Do you not understand that? But AI doesn't understand nuance. So this is important because 3 years ago, Judy and I did a podcast, and I'll release the feed here. Maybe I'll just unhide those 2 interviews on my main channel because people never listen to interviews because I always want like, what's the free information about astrology. So I'll unhide those. And I'm trying not to drive a lot of traffic to that channel because that's like collective reports. But I might have to because like that, we talked about mental health in the age of Aquarius. She's a Harvard trained psychiatrist and she does holistic psychiatry now. She doesn't do meds. She does she looks at the holistic, like how is mold affecting mental health and blah, blah, blah. And so she talked about mental health in the age of Aquarius. And we talked about, this was right when Pluto was about to go into Aquarius. So we talked about the low side of AI. So that's the low side of AI. Not only is it that AI is policing me, but now the reason it has to police me is because so many people are using AI for their therapist. Because I think people are having she said it. Listen to that interview. She's like, we're having a mental health. She's like, we're going to have a mental health crisis. You can feel it happening. You see it happening. And it's going on behind closed doors. So people are using AI, or maybe they can't afford to go to a therapist or what have you. So now I'm getting policed. And so I talked into the thing. I'm like, I don't know who's watching this or like recording this for your data files. I'm like, you need to stop this because this is ridiculous. Like, I do not need help. I'm going to put on a thing. I do not need help. Blah, blah, blah. Because then I was like, okay, I'm paying for this service. This is where we are. So I just take inputs from everywhere. If it's not obvious. Welcome to my brain. And it's crazy. And this is in addition to all the other stuff I said. And I just wanted to capture it because this is what I was fucking talking about. I was talking about 1703 is when this conjunction left happened. Put that into perspective in terms of the amount of lives people have lived between then and now. And I'll just state this. I mentioned a bunch of episodes that I did on my other podcast, and they're in the feed. They're labeled. And I did one on Neptune going into Aries and blah, 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 and blah, blah, and all from business and all that kind of stuff, right? And then, but I mean, it's collective conversation. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to get something out of it. Because Saturn's business and structures of society. So, of course, what it's doing, it matters. And then I did a final episode when Venus crossed the threshold. That's also in the title because we had Neptune go in, we had a bunch of planets go in. And then Venus kind of crossed the line and made it real. And I did an episode on my podcast about that. I don't remember when. It might have been late May. I'm not sure. You can check it out. But here's my point. Here's why that wants to come through is because I don't know if you can feel it. Can you feel it? This feminine rage? Am I the only one who's feeling this? I mean, I'm tapped and tuned in. Obviously, I'm a collective messenger. Obviously, I'm feeling this shit more than somebody else. But like, a lot of this is, are you watching what the fuck's going on? Like, I have an episode on my podcast, the other podcast, Clear Signal, which is a guest interview that I did with a woman. This is human design, blah, blah, blah. I did it a year ago. And then for certain reasons, it's not coming up now. I think it's going to be there. I'll put it on my podcast late October. I filmed that a year ago. And we're talking about what is it going to be like when this generation of women, she was early 40s, I was late 40s. What is the world going to look like when this generation does not give a fuck? We've never seen a group of women 40 plus not give a fuck, right? You guys, I've said this on a mic multiple times. And when I watched the interview I did with her, because I, of course, watched the whole hour because I was like, I don't want to put an hour-long interview on my other podcast. No one's going to listen. But then I was like, there's really nothing I would cut out. It's that good. And I'm going to put it on my main YouTube channel, Aligned Gold. And when I watch the interview and I hear myself say that, I get chills. And when I just said what I said, I got chills. Something's coming. And that's why I gave the warning about like, if you don't like fucking people talking about mundane shit in astrology, go elsewhere. Go elsewhere because you have no idea. Yes, we're going to talk about business and the markets and all of that, but we're going to talk about this too. At some level. Maybe once Uranus crosses the threshold and goes into Gemini for good, what we need to say has been said because we're going to see it with our own eyes. That could be the case. Wake-up calls usually are pre-getting up. And I'm good with that because I've been clocking this since 2022 and I've had conversations with people and they're public and I've said it. And, you know, if you've been listening, you know. And we set ourselves up for this. You know, there was episodes I did about the Saturn-Uranus square. That was the big headline of 2021, the conjunction 3 times. I did a series of episodes about that because that's the future and the past clashing. Then Pluto entered Aquarius. That's the collective uprising. Pluto is Kali energy. Pluto is death and rebirth. Pluto is it's rotting. And we had the U.S. return. You can check out my past stuff. We had the Pluto U.S. return, which is basically the end of a cycle. We've talked about eclipses so much. What the fuck is eclipses? They're death and rebirth cycles. That's why I did those readings. I don't do many readings like that. That's why I did that masterclass. That was Mars and Pluto together in a way we're never going to have again in our lifetime. And this eclipse season is way more powerful than other ones. And I don't have it does not affecting it anything angles in my chart at all. So this is affecting me no more than than anybody. The people who came to you for readings, it affects them way more than it affects me, which should make sense. But yeah, and a woman who got a reading from me in March, I believe it's March. It was spring, early spring. This eclipse happened to be very personal for her. So I clocked it for her then. I told her at her reading, this is what you can expect. So when I say it's your chart of now, I'm not just like, here's your today. I told her exactly what was going to happen in September. So she was able to write out this door much more. I think it was happening. I think she had like her south node at 29 degrees of Pisces or something crazy, like where Neptune's been sitting. And so then the Virgo 29-degree eclipse would have been in direct opposition to that on the collective south node. Can you feel that? I mean, think about that, right? Someone needs to know that shit's happening. So that's the kind of depth of work I do. And that's why I did those readings. Because if you look at the sales page, which I'm going to leave up, it says like, this isn't just a year. This is one of the biggest collective shifts of our lifetime. And so, if you did a personal shit, right, that's harder because we hold on. I'm the worst at holding on. I have a ruling planet in Cancer. I hold on to the death of things. But, you got to let shit go. And then I'm a human. I can say this on a mic and I can still struggle where I'm allowed to do that. Okay. I know that when you clear energy, you bring new things into your life, and I still can struggle as a human. I'm allowed to be both. So, but we know that happens in our life. I don't care if you know astrology or not. You know that feeling. You clean your car and then like an opportunity shows up, or you get rid of stuff you don't need anymore. And then like you meet someone. It's just like, it never fails. And yet the human side of us is like, we got to hold on. We got to hold on. We got to hold on. I don't know why. You know why I don't know why? Because it's in my subconscious. I got something to do right now, and I'm doing this instead, partly because I don't want to lose the download, and partly it's like, why are you avoiding this task? It's literally one phone call, and yet I'm avoiding it. Why? I can't know why, because it's under the hood, because it's my moon. It's my subconscious. Pluto's the subconscious. Kali's the subconscious. What, I said to a client, or I emailed a client something, just a person, I emailed something, it doesn't matter why. And I said, until we make something conscious, it remains unconscious. I think Carl Jung said that. So if you guys are tuned in and tapped in, if you've been listening to me, it's just conscious to the collective conscious now, but it's been happening for a while. My very, 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 very first episode of this podcast, I'm going to have to put them back up on the feed because I love the posterity of them. I don't know why I removed everything. I got in some weird perfectionistic bullshit and I removed everything. And that's low side Virgo, right? And the very, 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 very first episode of this podcast was about the Taurus Scorpio axes, which is relevant because we're talking about the Virgo Pisces axes. But let's go back 2 cycles. In January of 2022, the nodes switched to the north node in Taurus and the south node in Scorpio. Oh, I know why this wants to come up. Okay. Oh my God. Do I have to re-put that fucking file up? Oh man, I really hope I have it, the dated file on YouTube. Okay. I talked about Taurus. Taurus is Venus. She's the body. She's a female. And the low side of Scorpio is sex rings, power, money. The devil, basically. And I said, we haven't seen anything yet. And I said, and now we see all this shit coming out with the sex trafficking rings and all the other fucking bullshit. And this was before the Diddy shit. And this was before the thing that happened in France with that woman who outed her husband who had that weird shit going on. I don't remember her name. Giselle. And how she made it, she actually decided, like, I'm not going to hide. Because I think there's a law in France that unless she shows her face in public, again, I believe this is true, then the accusers can, unless she shows who she is and comes public, the accusers can hide. So she came public so that her accusers had to be in court. She's like, I would rather be publicly humiliated and see them suffer and see them identified. And the same thing with Cassie. And I don't know in that situation, but that was not a pleasant thing to have that video released and all that and all the stuff that came out of that. But it sparked conversations. I don't know if it did anything. And if you guys recall my past episodes, right? I talked about I'm going to have to, I think, unhide them, because I talked about this in the summer of 2024 when this shit happened, in that right before the election, that near, and I was talking about the same thing happened as what I'm doing now. I kept recording something because I felt like I needed to record something because there was something major happening. And I say it in that. There was some mega conjunction that happened that involved Mars and violence. And every time I kept wanting to record something and release it, something else crazy shit happened. Like what happened with the, Biden. Now I can say it. Last year you couldn't say it. Biden dropped out, Kamala there. And then the near death bullshit. And it was like, that was like in one weekend, I think. And I was like, oh my God. And I brought up the shooting related to that. And I brought up the Diddy trial, and I brought up a lot of other fucking crazy shit was happening. We saw what happened. He got let go, and that's because he knows too much. None of that makes sense. And I said this in like the Pluto. Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio. Mars is the ancient ruler. That's what I did that class. That class, by the way, is always going to be in the show notes. That's what I did that class. Because now you've got the modern and the ancient ruler of Scorpio coming together. That's why I did that big deep dive. What I did it was the last personal transmission. It was the week of eclipse season, last week of September, end of September. It'll be labeled. That's why I did that. Because I probably won't do anything like this again. I mean, I'll do some new stuff, but like, I have a couple of evergreen videos I'll be dropping when it feels like it, but it's it's the more thought leadership pieces on the state of astrology, and not really the state of astrology, but I didn't even plan for this. But when you see those episodes I dropped, the fact that I recorded them 3 months ago is going to make a lot of sense. Sometimes this stuff even blows my mind, and I'll just share really briefly, and then we'll get back to the new stuff. That Virgo Pisces, right? We know the axis. I've talked about the axis ad nauseum. I can still be an astrologer, and I can still be wowed at seeing it play out in my own life. So as a Virgo, 10th house sun Virgo, I mapped out the rest of my podcast episodes for my other podcast. Spreadsheet, color coded. We're good, right? Because I got a lot going on this fall, and I don't have time to do it. So I wanted to pre-record, or at least organize. I woke up one day and my spirit changed the entire fucking podcast. My spreadsheet was gone. Done. And everything changed, wiped away. And it downloaded a vision that was well beyond what my brain could, right? And then I was doing something else. I think I was distracted or something. And I never do stuff like this. I dragged the Excel spreadsheet the one I'd spent all the time on, hours, and dragged it to the trash and hit trash, delete. I don't remember doing it. So I had no choice but to fuck it. We can't go with the old plan. We're going to go with the new plan. That's Virgo Pisces. Crazy. But anyway, the point is that all of those episodes relate a lot to eclipse season and Pluto and death and rebirth and year of the snake and 9 year, and ways that I didn't plan that shit. They were just responses I had to something I saw online. And I was like, I got to talk about this in the kind of and because I say I do evolutionary astrology, and I wanted people to know what that is. It's not the label that you'll have to wait for that conversation. But anyway, that's the download I have right now. And I'll probably add the other thing I did, which is pretty long. And these will be pretty long because they're going to be what I want you to hear and know. And if something else happens before I release this, which will probably be mid-October, then I'll let you know. Maybe this whole episode, maybe I should release it now. Maybe I'll release this now. I'll say this is I'll be like, this is a transmission right now. And, I had a transmission when Uranus was stopped in Gemini, when the actual incident happened. And that's pretty powerful. And I'll release that as well. And now you can see why I give the warning that, there's stuff I talk about that if it bothers you, then, maybe choose another thing to listen to. And I try to keep it agnostic and fact-based. And, I think this whole thing is a fever dream. I think the whole thing is 1984. And I go into that in another episode. So I'm not going to belabor that. But the conspiracy theorist, which I do not consider myself a conspiracy theorist. By the way, I was downtown for September 11th, which is something I'll talk about on my other podcast. So when people talk about that, I get really fucking pissed off because I saw that shit actually happen. It did happen. Who was responsible for it? I don't know. That's above my pay grade. And I'll never know. And no one's ever going to know a lot of this stuff because a lot of these people are going to be dead. But my point, here's the bigger point about astrology. The point is I learned that in a half an hour, not trying. I went to my YouTube channel to like update something on the Cosmic Brew podcast show. I think I have to make them public or something. You know, the RSS feed goes to YouTube private and I have to remember to make it public. So I went there. And then because I used to watch Tim Dillon, he showed up and I saw that short. And then I wanted Instagram to update my bio and boom, I saw that maybe because I'm supposed to come in here and tell you. But that's Uranus and Gemini. Think about that speed. Think about the speed of news. Think about the speed of download. And I had this download. I'm on a mic. We're sharing it with God knows who. I don't think our brains were prepared for this shit. And that's what I was saying before. Like, we're going from a lot of water and earth to fire and air. And I said that in all the episodes I did on my other thing. That's before this was reborn. So I did a lot of my astrology stuff there. And I don't know what I'm doing moving forward. And I don't need to know. Because clearly every time I make a plan, it's a complete waste of time. And so, you know, there's like this strategy, this spiritual chess that's going on with some of the stuff I'm working on that's kind of fascinating to watch. It's kind of cool. What else? Yeah, depending on when this drops. If I drop this beforehand, and I'm doing it actually just so because this is 21 minutes, and if I had the other thing I said, this is gonna be like an hour and a half. So I'm gonna drop this here. I'm gonna drop this on a Saturday, and it does relate to the eclipse, so why not? And those readings are below. They are good until 10/1. And I talk a lot about people's experiences on the last episode that I dropped. I guess it'll be Friday. Maybe I'll drop this. Yeah, I'll drop this on the 30th, or I'll drop this on Monday. So if you happen to hear it, you can get one because, you know, at that point I can't, whatever, people got one is going to get one. But like I said, yeah, the results have been insane and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Feedback's been pretty impressive. So you can hear that on one of the other episodes. And yeah, we're at the end of September. So we're entering Q4. And that was an interesting slip, but I think Q4 and Q1, like Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026 is absolutely going to blow our fucking mind. I'll see you then.